Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video. I really appreciate it. If we have not met already, then hi, my name is Marissa Wight, and on Wednesdays, we get weird. For today's Weird Wednesday video, you guys, I have a story to share with you that I myself, every time I've heard about this case or looked into it in the past, I've always kind of felt like it was fabricated or made up. There's no way this is true. There's no way that this actually happened in real life. But it did, guys. Every single thing that I'm gonna be sharing with you guys about today's story is 100% true. You can fact check me, you can look up the story yourself. It's legit. If you're anything like me and you love horror films, then you've probably seen movies like The Silence of the Lambs, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Psycho, Deranged. These are all movies that were heavily, if not fully, based on Ed Gein. If you guys haven't already heard about this case, then sit back, grab a snack or a drink, lock your doors, and mentally prepare yourself for the story of the Butcher of Plainfield. So Ed Gein, or Edward Theodore Gein, which is his full name, was born on August 2nd in 1906 in La Crosse, Wisconsin. He was born to a couple named Augusta and George Gein. Now, right off the bat, Ed never had a chance, you guys. His mom really didn't want a son. She wanted a daughter, and she was a radical religious fanatic, and she had this like Puritan type of ideology that she followed, and she was very strict, controlling, and she pretty much demonized everything and everyone to her family. And I'll explain a little bit about that further in the video. So August and George were married, and George was a severe alcoholic. He couldn't hold down a normal job. He couldn't really provide for his wife or his family. And Augusta was constantly belittling him and making him feel bad and not really trying to get him out, but just kind of putting him down and kicking him while he's down. Augusta and George decided to have two sons, Ed and Henry. And from the time that Ed and Henry were born, their mother's grip on them was like no other. She had a death grip on her children. She was like one of those weird moms that was obsessive with her children, only idolizing her, only wanting to be around her and loving her, even though she didn't give any love or affection back to her children. She was very cruel to them and did the same thing that she did to George, belittled them, told them they were nothing, constantly just made them feel like absolute garbage. And as small children, the words that your parents speak to you, it sticks and it helps shape who you are and who person that you become. And so we're not going to get too deep on the psychology of that just yet, but like I said, from day one, as soon as Ed slid out of Augusta, she was just beating him down. So I mean, where do you think this story's gonna go? Augusta and George had this really awful toxic marriage, and the kids also hated George. Augusta obviously manipulated them and got in their head and convinced them that their father was the devil, but Augusta also convinced the boys that everyone was the devil. Augusta hated women. All women were whores and like the devil's spawn, and they were here to seduce you and suck your soul through your body and just wreck your shit. Except her. She, of course, Augusta, she just was holier than thou, and she was apparently the only just and righteous woman in the world, according to her. And she made her children believe this. She also hated men who belittled women and put them down, which is kind of contradicting because she is belittling women and putting them down. And so she just sounds like a genuinely hateful, awful person, right? Plain and simple, she's terrible. So because Augusta's hatred was so intense, she felt the need to move from their hometown of La Crosse, Wisconsin to Plainfield, Wisconsin, which was a tiny little spit on the map of a town, very, very rural, not a lot of people living there. I don't have an exact population to give you guys, but it was tiny. Everyone knew everyone type of deal, and not a lot of people coming in or out. So this was perfect for Augusta because she ended up getting a little farmhouse secluded from everyone where she could rule her roost however she wanted, put down her kids, control her husband, and just have her little reign of terror. So because of Augusta's weird religious views and just intensity in general, she didn't let the boys go anywhere or do anything other than the bare minimum. So they did go to school, and then they came home and they worked on the farm and waited on Augusta hand and foot. And that was it. They had no real interactions socially with the outside world because Augusta did not allow it. Ed Gein was known in school to be odd, and he's one of the classic serial killer cases where he was bullied and he really did have a hard time in those formative years as a child. He was known to just have random outbursts of laughter out of nowhere in the middle of class, and people thought that he was just crazy. So eventually in 1944, Ed's father ended up dying of heart failure. Now, most people say that this was due to the drink, but that's neither here nor there. He died of heart failure. And Ed and his mom and his brother, they were actually really relieved and happy when their dad kicked the bucket. They were happy because they kind of felt like he was useless and he was a drunk and toxic, and obviously, you know, they favored their mother, and when their dad died, they were just like, sick. Crazy, right? But that's how it was. So after the passing of their father, Henry ended up meeting a woman, and she was a divorcee and she had a couple of kids, and he ended up falling in love with her. And of course, Augusta, being the batshit crazy, overly religious fanatic that she was not about this. She instantly shut it down. She didn't want one of her sons to be with a divorced woman, and she would not give them their blessing. And so Henry kind of was just like, you know what, Mom? I'm done with your bullshit. I'm out. I'm done with your creepy little mommy dearest game. I'm out of here. Bye. So he left. And this pissed Augusta off. So with Ed being the little mommy's boy that he is, which I don't know if I mentioned that to you guys how intense it was, he was obsessed with his mother, right? Like, his mom was his entire world. He lived and breathed for his mother. That's the way that she raised him, and it worked. He was brainwashed, and he believed that Augusta could do no wrong. So when his brother hurt his mother, that really pissed him off. One day on the farm, Ed's brother decided to come over and help him with one of those like controlled burns where they're just burning like shrubbery or like, you know, debris on the land. So they're doing this controlled burn, and mysteriously this fire like breaks loose and he gets all wild, and Ed runs for the hills and he makes it out, but of course his brother Henry doesn't. So we've got kind of like a Cain and Abel situation going on here, if you follow me with that. So Ed runs out, oh my gosh, there's this crazy fire, and Henry, he got stuck, and let me show you where I last saw him. And so he leads them back to Henry's body, face down, in the middle of the field, untouched by any flames. No fire had actually touched him. And so his death was ruled out like due to suffocation or inhalation of the smoke, because there was no proof. Yet his body had some suspicious bruising on it, but no one seemed to look into that. Nothing weird here going on. Obviously this is before forensics and stuff like that, so you know, people could get away with shit like this easily. So if you ask me, he killed his brother. I mean, come on, put two and two together, but it was never actually proven. But when I tell you what this man did later on in this video, which if you've made it this far, keep watching, because shit's gonna get crazy. After the death of his brother, Ed and Augusta were all alone to live out their weird, creepy little life on their secluded farm with just the two of them and have their heads up each other's butts, guys. I don't know, it was weird. So the way that Ed made a living in town was through odd jobs, and he was known for being a handyman. And everyone that worked with Ed or that had hired Ed said that he was really genuine and kind of shy and reserved, and it was just a really nice guy and very dependable and punctual and an overall hard-working man. He also picked up jobs here and there as a babysitter. A babysitter. And you'll realize later in this video why I'm emphasizing this so much. He babysat people's children. Ed was known in the town for being a little odd. His reputation from when he was a child never really changed. People didn't think that he was dangerous though. They just thought he was odd. You know, they understood his upbringing. They know that he lost his father and all of the kind of weirdness that his mother had inflicted on him. So people kind of took pity on him and made excuses for him. And Ed would crack weird, morbid jokes every now and then in the local tavern and say kind of off-the-wall things, but no one ever took it seriously. We learned from later findings that Ed, in his free time, liked to clip out pictures from the obituary and save them. And he liked to read up on the Nazi concentration death camps. And back then, without having the internet, these magazines that were putting out these pictures of this gruesome death, like images, you know, they didn't have that back. That wasn't a thing that you could just search. Ed was fascinated by this, so he read a lot about Nazi Germany, and he was into like horror comics and all kinds of things like that, which I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that if you're interested in horror or crime or history, that you're weird. I am fascinated by all those things. But what makes it weird is that Ed was more obsessive with these things. And he liked looking at them because it did something in his brain that when you're just interested in a topic and a subject, you don't have that same reaction. He was like kind of getting off on it. So that's when it becomes wrong. So at age 67 in the year 1945, Augusta finally died. She dropped dead. And I think it was said that she had a stroke. He didn't kill her. Don't jump to conclusions. Trust me, that was the last thing that he would do is kill his mommy. Trust me, he was obsessed with his mommy. But she died, and this really sent Ed into a downward spiral. Like I said, his mom was his world. He was the world's biggest mama's boy. He didn't know anything else other than her. So when she died, you guys, this sent an already odd, broken little man into a mental breakdown that caused some pretty horrific things. So Ed used to hang out at this tavern, and there was this woman that owned it. Her name was Mary Hogan, and Ed thought that she had a striking resemblance to his beloved late mommy dearest. So he used to go to this tavern and he would just like stare at her and be weird. And Mary knew that something was off, but she felt bad for him, and she knew that he was in there staring at her because she reminded him of his mother, so she just let him do it. So eventually, Miss Mary Hogan went missing. Surprise, surprise, she disappears. Nobody knows where she is. And there's talk of the town and, you know, little suspicions here and there, but nobody suspected Ed. Nobody thought that he would actually do something weird to her. It's said that Ed actually made a comment one time to Mary on Christmas, and he like pulled her apron strings and was like, hey, you need to hurry up and get home. It's Christmas, and you never know. It might be your last. He was not kidding, you guys. He would make jokes after Mary's disappearance to the other patrons and say things like, oh yeah, she's not missing. She's back at my farm. And people would just, very funny. he wasn't joking. He was dead ass serious. So time goes on, Mary is still missing. There's a few other random people that go missing in this town. It was never super looked into or pinned to Ed. So in 1957, there was a woman named Bernice Warden, and she owned the local hardware store. So she, on a normal day, would open up the hardware store and she would work all day and then close it. And at this time, it was hunting season. So all the men in the town would go off and go hunting for deer and leave all of the women in the town to just kind of, tend to themselves. And the men would come into town and, gather supplies and check back in with the women and whatnot. But then they would hit the road and go back out into deer country. Well, Ed was not a hunter. Not of animals anyway. So he didn't join in on these festivities. So he's hanging back. And on this morning of 1957, when Bernice opened her hardware store, she closed it very quickly. And the townspeople knew that it was odd for her to have her closed sign out this early in the day. So her son decided to pop in and see what was going on. And they found a giant pool of blood and a bunch of shells. So obviously, it's apparent that this woman, Bernice, was shot and drug away somewhere. And so police decide to, well, actually it was her son, who I believe was actually a sheriff, if I'm not mistaken, if my memory doesn't fail me. Sorry guys, I'm kind of just freeballing it here. I believe her son was a sheriff, and he looked through the register to see who the last receipt was from. And guess who it was, guys? Just guess. Yeah, it was Ed. It was Ed Gein. He had purchased some antifreeze, and so he was the last person that had seen Bernice. Obviously, he's the last receipt in the store, and she was taken from the store. Okay, they're putting two and two together here finally. So 2 deputies decide to go out to the Gein farm, check things out, question him. The police arrive and the house was boarded up. After Ed's mother, Augusta, died, he decided to board up all the windows, board up all areas of the house that were like her domain, so basically the entire house. And he wanted to keep it as untouched as possible because he wanted to leave his mother's literal fingerprints on everything. Like, he didn't want to disturb anything. So he blocked everything off. His domain was basically like the kitchen area and like his room, and that was where he stayed. This house, you guys, was absolutely disgusting. Like, you could smell it from a mile away. It was awful. Dirt everywhere, things piled everywhere. You could barely walk around in the house. So the officers decided to go through the back entryway, and they had a summer kitchen, which I guess is common in older houses like this, especially farmhouses. They decided to make their way in through the summer kitchen. And what they saw when they walked through those doors, you guys, it's a lot. So this is the time, if you're squeamish and things about gore and blood and guts and all of that, which I don't know why you're even watching this video if you are, but if you're sensitive to those things, you might want to skip ahead a little bit. And yeah, here we go. So they open the door and they find Bernice Warden, the missing woman from the hardware store, hanging upside down by her ankles. She's naked and she's gutted. He slit her from her throat all the way down to her pubic bone and just hollowed her out. She was also missing her head. He had decapitated her. And she was just hanging, spread wide open, exposed with all of her entrails gone. And the officers could not believe their eyes. This was a small town, you guys. Everybody knew everybody. They knew this woman. And one of the officers actually had to step out, and he was throwing up, and he couldn't deal. So they called for backup because, this is a small town. Nothing like this has ever happened. This was a sight to see for them, as it would be for anybody. This was so gruesome and awful. And you think, wow, what a horrible, awful, gory thing to see. That's horrible. That wasn't even the tip of the iceberg as to what they found when the rest of the authorities got there and they entered the rest of Ed's home. I don't even know where to begin, you guys. Like, where shall we start? They saw just human remains everywhere. There was human skulls on his bedpost, just, you know, for like decoration. He really liked the aesthetic. There was lips that were cut off of somebody's face and like attached to a drawstring for blinds. Like the string that you pull down to open your blinds up. There was just a pair of lips like attached to the end of it. I don't know, you guys. What else was there? There was a bunch of human dentures just out on display. There was a giant jar of chewed up bubble gum. It seemed like he was into oddities, right? But then, like I said, there's things like human noses cut off. I think there was 4 human noses. Takes the joke, I got your nose, to a whole nother level, because he really did have your fucking nose, and it was in a shoebox in his house. They found a belt like that you wear around your waist, right? With the buckle and everything intact. Completely made from women's nipples, you guys. He cut their nipples off and like, I don't know if he taxidermied them or preserved them or like made them into like leather, dried them out, but he sewed them into a belt. So it's just like a nipple belt. What? Why? There was bowls that were made out of human skulls that he had like sawed the top of the skulls off and was like eating his cereal out of it. Well, I don't know what he ate, you guys. He didn't keep a food journal. I don't know what he ate, but I'm assuming he ate something out of it because it was kept in his kitchen, like with the other bowls and silverware. He was eating food out of human skulls. He made a lampshade out of faces. You guys, I can't insert images in this video because I'm not gonna open that can of worms. I don't know the legalities, the copyrights, and I also don't know YouTube's policies on that, but I'm pretty sure I'd be violating a couple of them. But if you guys are sick and morbid and really wanna get a visual of these things, just look it up. Look up Ed Gein's House of Horrors and all of his little DIY crafts. DIY with Ed Gein. On this episode, nipple belts. How do you think of this stuff, you guys? He had kept like women's fingernail clippings and all kinds of other weird little things like that that weren't necessarily like gory, but just odd. What gets me the most, you guys, they found a box of vulvas. You know, like women's lips, but not from their face. Like he cut their vulvas off and just threw them in a box. I'm just gonna save those for later. And one of them was painted silver and he put a little red bow on it. Like, apparently Ed really wanted to get in touch with his artistic side. You know, he decided to take it to the next level. I'm not just gonna cut your vulva off and throw it in a box. I'm gonna decorate it. You know, I'm not gonna do you that dirty. I'm gonna at least make it look pretty. Yeah, that happened. That was real. He had a chair that he like used human skin stretched out to upholster to the chair. He had a coffee table with human shin bones holding it up. The legs of the table were legs. Literal legs. They found Mary Hogan's face in a paper bag. You remember Mary Hogan? The one that looked like his mom that went missing and he made all those jokes about her being at his farmhouse? He wasn't joking, you guys. She was there. Her face was in a bag, a paper bag in his house. Her skull was found in a box. Bernice's head, you know, the one that was hanging in the summer kitchen, they found her head. It was in a burlap sack. Apparently his fridge and freezer was also stocked full of human organs. Now, It's not 100% that Ed was a cannibal, and he never admitted to being a cannibal, but put 2 and 2 together, guys. Human skull bowls, organs in the freezer and fridge. There was even a heart. I think that one belonged to Bernice. Yeah, Bernice's heart was in a little plastic bag just sitting in front of the stove, like ready to cook. Come on, guys, you know he was eating the people. He was eating them. If he's gonna cut people's vulvas off and save them in a box and decorate them, what makes you think he's not gonna eat a person? Like, come on. Yes, he was eating them, or going to eat them. All right, now here's for the kicker, guys. I want you to close your eyes and imagine it's a calm Sunday night. You're at home, you're relaxing. You wanna wear your favorite snuggly sweater. Maybe throw on a pair of your favorite leggings or PJ bottoms. Whatever makes you feel comfy. And you know what? Just because you really wanna treat yourself, you're gonna throw on a face mask because self-care. So you got your face mask, your cozy sweater, your leggings, you're chilling on the couch, you're watching TV, or you're reading your favorite book. Doesn't that sound nice and relaxing? It does, doesn't it? But what if I told you that the leggings or the PJ pants that you're wearing are literally women's leg skin cut off and sewn up into pants? What if I told you that that snuggly sweater that you were wearing is a bodysuit made of skin, human women skin? It even has some accessories. It even has 2 full breasts sewn onto the front of it. And what if I tell you that that face mask that you're wearing to, really relax you and cleanse your pores is just that, a face mask. Someone's face cut off of their head and on your face as a mask. Does it still sound fun? Does it still sound relaxing? No? I didn't think so. Unless your name is Gein, then that sounds like a whole party. That sounds like a whole ass party to him. And that's what he did. And they found it. They found a skin suit, a skin mask. He would wear these skin suits and just hang out, read his Nazi stuff and clip out obituary pictures and eat out of his human skull bowls and twirl around in his garden and check his Twitter. And I don't know what he did in it, you guys, and he admitted to this. He admitted to this. They finally got him to crack, right? So what his logic was with this skin suit and mask was that he wanted to be his mother. He wanted to physically and literally be his mother or be like his mother. He did this to be his mommy. That sick, weird obsession that he had with his mom went to a whole nother level. I mean, he wanted to keep her alive by wearing a skin suit of women that reminded him of his mom and just hang out in the house wearing it. So you guys remember how I told you that Ed Gein liked to clip out obituary pictures and articles and stuff? Well, the reason why he was doing that is because he was finding fresh bodies that were just buried to go dig up. He was a body snatcher. He went and dug up women who he found in the obituary that were freshly buried because he didn't want old, decomposed bodies. He wanted fresh bodies because he wanted to use the skin. And so he would go dig them up and take from them what he wanted and then put back what he didn't want. Yeah, I actually read somewhere that he had help, that he had a partner in this. And a lot of the articles that I read, they don't mention this guy, but it was said that he did have help, that there was a guy that was helping him dig up the bodies and stuff, and that he didn't necessarily know what Ed was doing with this stuff, but that he was a part of it. So if you guys want to dig deeper into that, you're more than welcome to, but I have not myself. That's just something that I heard. But still, you guys, could you imagine? I mean, the poor families to know that their mother or sister or grandma that their remains were disturbed for some sicko who's obsessed with his dead mommy to dig them up and take from them, from their bodies, to go wear it. It's mind-boggling, you guys. This guy was deranged on a whole nother level. So obviously Ed got caught, you know, after they cleared out his little house of horrors and found everything. I mean, and the list goes on. I'm sure I missed a few things, guys. I mean, there was just death and remains everywhere and just odd things. They got Ed to confess to murdering Bernice and Mary, right? So Bernice and Mary was the one from the tavern and Bernice was the one from the hardware store. He admitting to killing them, but he didn't admit to killing anybody else. He said that everything that he had in his house was all from graves. So this is where I get confused, because this little handy dandy encyclopedia of serial killers that I have, yeah, don't judge me, don't come for me. Eddie Boy is in here. Let's find him. All right, friends. There's Eddie Boy. Yeah, that's the guy that made the nipple belt and painted vulvas silver in the hat. You're staring at the face of the man who decided it was a good idea to cut off people's faces and make lampshades. So what I'm getting at here is he's in this book as a serial killer. I personally don't believe that Ed Gein is a serial killer, because serial killers, they kill repetitively and kind of in cold blood, and Ed was sick and demented, and actually he ended up being diagnosed with some type of mental disorder. I don't want to offend anybody and throw the exact one out there, because I feel like if I do, that's kind of demonizing that disorder. And you can have mental disorders, you can have schizophrenia, you can have bipolar, and not cut people's faces off and wear it, okay? But he was diagnosed with some kind of really severe, obviously untreated mental illness. I mean, you don't do the kind of shit that this man does and be sane. Like, obviously he's sick. But he wasn't a serial killer, in my opinion. He was a murderer, he was batshit insane, and he was disgusting and should be locked away, but he wasn't a serial killer. He actually only admitted to killing 2 people. He actually only ended up getting charged for 1 murder. The details about that and all the things that have to do with the court and the trial, you can look into that if you want. In a nutshell, they didn't want to spend the money on going and taking him to trial for 2 murders when they already pinned him on 1. They already pinned him on, it was, I believe, Bernice, he was convicted of, right? And that was enough to throw him away and lock away the key. Mary Hogan, they didn't want to reopen everything and spend more money and, open up all these wounds again. It just wasn't worth it. So he only actually got convicted of 1, but admitted to both. So there was some people in the area that went missing, and a lot of people believe it was Ed, but some of them were men, and Ed would have no motive to kill men. So I don't know if I necessarily believe that. And all the remains and things that were found were from females, not men. So even though he wasn't a serial killer, he was still a deranged, crazy, sick man who did murder people. So in 1957, he was deemed insane and he was sent to the Mendota mental hospital for the criminally insane to be locked away for the rest of his life with no chance of ever getting out. A decade went by and his doctors decided that he, with treatment and medication, was sane enough to actually stand trial, and that's when he did get convicted of the first murder, even though he did admit to 2. So yeah, he spent the rest of his life there. He did try to get out. I believe it was, I don't even know the decade, 70s, I think. He tried to get out and petition for it, and people lost their shit and were like, hell to the no, nipple belt making man, you are not getting out. And obviously they didn't even entertain it. He lived and died in that mental hospital, as he should. So yeah, it was 1984, and he was 77 years old, and he died of respiratory failure due to lung cancer. So he did end up getting sick, and yeah, he lived the remainder of his years in that hospital and died. It is said from the other patients, and this is kind of freaky, it is said from other patients that were in the same hospital that he was, that eventually like got released or they got statements from, that Ed was really sweet and kind and nice and charming, all of those things. But on a full moon, Ed would kind of go a little cuckoo, and he would start talking about the things that he did to these women and why he did these things and how much he liked it and weird shit about his mom, and just act like a completely different person. Yeah, you guys, I cannot believe that that was real. I mean, I am a horror junkie, I'm a crime junkie, but this case just, it hits different, you guys. It's so hard to process that, you know? And you hear people doing these awful, atrocious things, and it is unfathomable, but something about this case is just so hard for me to process. I don't know how you guys feel, but it really does turn my stomach. You wonder when you watch those movies, I'm always like, how do they come up with this shit? That's how they get inspired by real, true stories, you guys. So anytime you're watching a horror movie and you're like, it's just a movie, no reason to be scared. Yeah, there's a good chance that the main character of the movie is based off of a real person. I mean, Buffalo Bill and Silence of the Lambs, you remember, you know? Hello, Clarice with Hannibal Lecter and Buffalo Bill. He would kidnap plus-size women. He liked the thick women because their skin was nice and supple and amazing. And he would put them in a hole in his house, like a well, and throw lotion on them. You know the scene. It puts the lotion on its skin, or else it gets the hose again. So we would like hose the women down in there if they didn't like moisturize their skin. Then he would kill them and cut their skin off and wear it, dance around. That is Ed Gein. Like, that was based off of Ed Gein. So crazy. Yeah, guys, that is the story of Ed Gein, the Butcher of Plainfield, the Ghoul of Plainfield, as he is called. Blows my mind, guys. You know, I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I apologize if it was a little too graphic and too much. Not every Weird Wednesday video I'm gonna be posting is gonna be of this nature, but this is something that I knew I wanted to share. There is a ton of YouTubers that have done, you know, stories on Ed Gein. There is a ton of research out there. There is a ton of movies and stuff. And I know it's something that's been done, I know, but it's something that fascinates me, and it's something that I just had to share with you guys and talk about, because I mean, he cut their vulvas off and he put them in a box and painted them and put bows on. I'm like, what? Thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. I hope I didn't freak you out too much. And yeah, stay tuned for next week's Weird Wednesday. I already have something planned. And stick around for my other videos as well. I will be posting something tomorrow if you guys would like to check it out, Halloween related. No pressure. If you did like this video, it would really mean a lot and help me out if you would like and subscribe. Subscribing, if you're not a YouTube person or you don't, you know, have a channel yourself where you need subscribers, it makes a world of a difference. It makes all of this time and effort so worth it. I mean, I'm enjoying being on this platform, but I do work full-time and this does take a lot of time. Just to know that you guys are enjoying it and, you know, really want to see my content, it's very encouraging and it makes me want to create more and stay on this platform. I really appreciate you guys clicking on this video today, and I will see you guys next time. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.